Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Winter Court Podcast, your premier podcast for competitive content for the upcoming LCG Legend of the Five Rings by Fantasy Flight Games. Today, we are going to talk about some of the gencon prize pool. We're going to talk about some more games we've been playing, and we're going to cover the Unicorn Clan. Once more, I am Travis McDaniel, also known as I Fight Dragons on the Discord, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, social media, the interwebs. And I am joined here by Alex Gentry.
I am Alex Gentry, also known as Dark Destroy on the Discord and Reddit and various other threads. And now on Twitch, if people want to come watch me fail at running Titan Souls, which is completely unrelated.
And whenever the online client for L5R comes on, you're going to stream that too, right?
Yeah, we'll stream that.
Mm-hmm. And Dan Henley as well. Welcome back.
Yep. I'm Dan Henley. My name is Danwar on the subreddit, as well as the Discord, and I'm a moderator on the L5R subreddit as well. So we ready to get into this? I think my big news actually is I was able to play with a real life core set on this past Friday. A friend of mine got a review copy, and so I was actually able to see the cards for the first time, and get a good look at all the art and get a good look at everything. And the game is as good as we imagined it's going to be, as amazing as we imagine the art's going to be in person. It's just a really quality product. One of the actually funnier things about it is the dials, the honor dials, are as big as my palm. So
yeah, I kind of called that. I remember mentioning that, when they were doing their test game, those honor dials are fat.
They're super huge, and I will say the one thing I actually sort of dislike about them is the numbers are. They went with the swoopy aesthetic on the numbers, and so sometimes if you're just glancing at something, it can be hard to tell what number somebody picked. But overall, the game, compared to what we've been doing on Tabletop Simulator and then other proxy games and stuff, is fundamentally the same. And card art looks gorgeous. The tokens look great. And speaking of other things that look great, right? So you wanted to mention the Gen Con prize support, right, Travis?
Oh yeah. So I'm a big fan of the story prize, actually. I think it's really good. They didn't just cop out and go clan coup first thing. They kind of hinted at it with the Scorpion story that dropped yesterday. But I'm glad that it's more or less something that may or may not happen still. And this story sort of prize is really an interesting choice for people who love the lore and for people who want repercussions for the actual story. This one's a big one. So if you didn't know, the story prize was revealed to be whether or not Meishodo, the unicorn's talisman magic, should be allowed or banned within the Empire. And the reason for this is because the Phoenix, being the spiritual leaders of Rokugan, their Void Shugenja have been seeing visions of a dark shadow coming from these talisman magics, from the unicorn lands, and it's going to be coming for the Emperor. And they believe the Emperor's life is in serious danger because of this magic. And so the story choice is basically going to involve whether or not the players who become Hatamoto on Thursday, or the top of clans, are going to choose whether or not they want to investigate and learn the secrets of Meishodo, force the unicorn to turn those over to the Imperial Guard so that they understand it and know how to protect against it should things go south, or whether or not Meishodo should just be banned outright, and this would really hurt the unicorn's position as a aid to the Empire, as well as their ability to actually fight, because Meishodo magic is very powerful. So I think it's a really cool and interesting story choice. They sort of hinted that this was a conflict before with the dragon story and the Phoenix story a little bit, I think it was mentioned. But I'm glad that it ended up being something a lot bigger than just something that was in passing. The Phoenix don't like the unicorn right now.
Yeah, so it's definitely awesome that they're going all out with this story. I'm actually more interested to see what the gameplay implications of this are. So from what I'm gathering based on the reading is I feel like it's going to impact some cards that Unicorn might have, and also impact cards that people who splash Unicorn play, which would be super interesting. Just to see how all that works going forward, on top of the way they're doing the role cards. I don't know. We haven't really talked about that. That's all come out in the next, or since our last podcast. But they're doing a lot of different overlapping things with the way the game is going to work and where players can interact and still shape the world, but not have as much leeway as I think AEG gave players over the game. So it's I like that FFG is running a little bit of a tighter ship, but still making it feel like people are making contributions. So the story prize is really cool, and then on top of that, just the general prize support in general that FFG is offering at Gen Con is insane. Like the mats all look great, all of the plastic strongholds and the full bleed champions, all the extra stuff you get for being a Hatamoto or even just participating, just all looks really good. And I'm really happy that FFG decided to go all in, at least for Gen Con. We'll see what happens a year from now, because FFG, their track record's not fantastic, but they seem like they've kind of gone all in on L5R because it's their product. So that's really cool.
I do have to say too, though, that we haven't talked about the way the Hatamoto works either at Gen Con, and the fact that we have roll cards to choose from, and you are going to be limited in deck building between one roll card decided on by the Hatamoto at the tournament at Gen Con.
Roll cards are determined on Friday, I believe, and the story result is determined on Thursday.
Yeah. So that though I think it's really cool that we have like some kind of story implication to all of this, it worries me a lot for competitive play. So the fact that like I don't know how the story elements are gonna factor in. It might just be like you get a different card pool, or like they flavor cards differently based on what people choose for X faction or whatever, which wouldn't be too big a deal, and that would just kind of be a cool story thing. But like the roll cards, at least for now, we know for sure are going to be limited by what the Hatamoto chooses at Gen Con, which really limits deck building going into the future. Because like even if you pick the perfect roll card for every deck for that faction at Gen Con right now, there's no particular reason for me to assume that 6 months from now that's going to be the card that I want in my deck.
Right.
Well,
and then at Gen Con, the Hatamotos or the top 7 of clan are picking the roll cards at Gen Con, and that's going to lock in selection going into the World Championships in November. And then the top 7 of clan at Worlds are going to pick new roles so they can't pick the one that they picked last time, and it has to be a role that another clan hasn't picked. So it'll be interesting to see how FFG does the role draft, quote unquote, going forward, and seeing how that all shakes out over the course of the year. I've been fairly vocal that I think this is kind of a really weird gameplay choice in terms of limiting deck construction and letting players get a full flavor of the card pool based on story. But for roll cards that exist within the context of the core set and are supposed to be something that intro players understand and get at, but then they're extending it to this like year-long lock-in, which seems very, very strange. Like if they changed every 4 or 3 to 6 months, like a little bit quicker turnover where like people had more input, then I wouldn't feel as weird about it. But having things locked in from Worlds 2017 to Worlds 2018, it just seems like an odd choice.
Yeah, I mean, even that short a span of time, even like 3 to 6 months would bother me a lot in a competitive sense, just because, sometimes I want to try X role in a deck because I think it's better, and it probably is better, in some decks. So like, even without new cards coming out, like you just go, oh, well, there's a new strategy for this deck because nobody,
right.
People haven't played it before and nobody thought about it before. And it just, I need X role card to make it function, and it just doesn't, I can't, going into a competitive environment, it's physically impossible now. So it limits deck building a lot. And even more so because of the 1 year, because, new cards come out and all of a sudden you want to change the way it's played, but you can't because you're locked in. So, I don't know. It bothers me a whole lot for competitive play. I think it's cool for a story reason, and for like a casual game, it's really good. But FFG, I think, has made it clear that this is going to be both both a casual and a competitive game. Like that they are going to focus on the competitive aspects of it more than they have in some of their past games. So, it's a very strange choice.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how the whole thing goes going forward through the year, and because I think there's decent amount of support for it right now, which surprises me. Like for all the reasons that you said, because it limits deck building. Whereas other games, if they did something like that, everyone would be like, "Why are you doing that?" Like imagine if WotC for MTG just finally decided that like if you play blue-red, you can't play these cards, or you have to play these cards. That everyone would be like, "Why?" As opposed to having the meta decide what comes in and what comes out. So we'll see if people's opinions tend to sour over the course of the year, and if the FFG changes that. I think additionally, they've shown that within the core set, with the initiate cards, that they at least kind of designed around the roles, the two roles, like Seeker and Keeper, having specific cards for those. So I wonder if they've even included more Keeper and Seeker exclusive cards within the cycles that are going to come out over the next year. And so that way that's going to cause a little bit even more kind of consternation with players, because they're like, okay, I really want to play this card. This card's very good, but my clan is a Seeker, so I can't play this Keeper card. Especially with the Seeker and Keeper initiates. I feel like the Keeper initiate is very powerful in a 3-core environment.
Right, but that hasn't been officially spoiled yet. So we'll behoove ourselves to FFG, and hopefully that gets released within the next week for you guys to debate on. I think the main argument for roles, or rather the main viewpoint, I think it's just a difference of viewpoint, right? People coming from other games where they're used to playing competitively and used to having the entire card pool available to them are not going to like this as much, just because, you know, you're saying, well, you have to kind of carding yourself into this role. Whereas the way that I understand most people coming from L5R view it, especially like old 5R players, are this role impacts the game as a story decision. You are getting a bonus, not a negative. You're getting a bonus roll on top of your stronghold that you can use in deck building. And that roll may change. And yeah, some bonuses might be better than others, but it's still a bonus. It's not you're losing something, it's you're gaining something that you otherwise wouldn't have. And it's just kind of a viewpoint thing. I've kind of come around to the idea. I'm willing to try it out and see how it goes. I do think my only concern with it is just the turnover. A year is a really long time, especially if they start spitting out packs like they have with other games where they can get through like 2 cycles in a year. Being locked into a Keeper or Seeker specific role could be hindering at times. But we'll see. And that honestly just kind of comes down to how much of the cards come out that require a specific role.
I think the other point in the role lock-in or the role selection favor is it kind of prevents people from just metaing and picking the best role, because I'm sure there would be consensus formed around, okay, this is the best role for a competitive environment, simply because it gives you the most consistency in a game to game. I think the example I typically use is Seeker of Earth. So the Seeker role allows you to run 2 provinces of the same type. So the Seeker of Earth would get to run both Ancestral Lands, which is a 5 strength province that gives you +5 strength during political conflicts, and then also Entrenched Position, which is the same but for military. So being able to run both of those could be very strong, just because you can switch what goes under your stronghold province based on your clan matchup. So let's say I'm Unicorn and I'm playing against Lion one time. So I have the option of putting like the military one there, because I know they're not going to be able to swing as much with political. But maybe I'm playing Crane the next time, and I can put Ancestral Lands under my strongholds, because I know they're not going to be able to break that as well. So I think it's beneficial in terms of that, because it locks people in. You don't get to pick, and so it prevents the same role from getting picked over and over again by all of the top decks. But then, like all the reasons Gentry mentioned, it's limiting from the sense that I can't change it once it's selected. Like, it's someone else selected it for me, and then if I wanted to test this in a competitive environment, I really can't anyway, because of the way the rules are structured. But
yeah, I think it's just a viewpoint thing. I think it'll be a lot. I don't think it's like a doomsaying thing. I think it's just going to be a neat thing the game does. That's different, similar to how Fate works.
Right. And so, like I said, we'll see how everything goes out through the course of the year. If it ends up being garbage, maybe FFG is like, okay, we're going to switch it to where you're not locked in, or maybe we're switching roles a lot more quickly. But I'm willing to give it a year test just to see where everybody lands after we physically try it in more competitive environments for a longer time.
Yep. So
speaking of competitive environments, do you want to mention the unofficial events?
Yeah, so once more, we're going to bring up the unofficial events that Discord forum and Reddit user Rega is running, or he sort of helped orchestrate this. Myself and a couple of other people are contributing. My contribution is actually probably about as minimal as it gets. I'm just contributing some prizes and maybe helping run the thing. But on Friday night in the gaming hall, I believe it's E or F, you can find us. We are going to be running just a meet and play for L5R. So people who just want to get together and play some games can do that. And then on Saturday at 10, same place, we will be running a unofficial tournament. I believe it is a single elimination, just bracket tournament. And there will be prizes for both events just for doing stuff and hanging out, playing games. So this is just for people who like didn't get tickets to the really massively popular official events. These are open to all and anyone who wants to come by and play. It's all there just so you guys can play L5R and get involved with the community a little more.
You can come beat us. It'll be fun.
Yeah. So,
you'll beat me. You probably won't beat Travis, but you'll beat me for sure.
Well, dude, I'm not that good. I'm trash. So once more,
what does that say
Friday.
about me? You know,
Yeah, it means you're garbage.
I'm just super garbage. Well, what's funny is actually in the different play groups that I've played with, the one where we test on TTS is the one where I have more mixed results. But like when I play with the people I used to play Netrunner and stuff with, I've actually been winning more consistently.
I think it depends on how much your opponents have played the game. This is a very like you have to understand the game kind of game.
It's a very high skill game.
Yeah, the more you play, the better you get, and it just keeps getting the like level of skill keeps going up and up. So yeah,
which is good. It's good for the game.
Yep. So those unofficial events again are Friday, I believe, at 11 and Saturday at 10. You can check it out. There's a post on the forums, and if you want to get more specific, there is a channel in the Discord specifically for these unofficial events. And you can always just ask me or Rega or anyone else who's helping run the thing if you have any questions. So yeah, GenCon is just, 5 days away now?
Just around the corner.
Really? 4 really? Because 5 is Thursday, so 4 until Wednesday when we're all going to Indianapolis and not sleeping the night before. I will be there Wednesday. I'm going to be getting up super early to wait in line at 5 a.m. To go get a core set from the booth, and then I'm going to go to the Kiku Matsuri and get my other core set, and then I'm going to try to get a third core set somewhere in there, but that might not be possible.
So apparently the note about that is they're only selling core sets on Thursday and Friday. Additionally, if you're waiting in line for the Kiku Matsuri or whatever, they're handing out tickets so that way you can buy core sets or something, like pre-purchase. And based on the fact that they've sent out review copies to various people, they're gonna have a decent amount. So yeah, but they're only selling Thursday, Friday is what I saw.
So if I'm in the Kiku Matsuri and I wait in line, do I have to use my free voucher for the Kiku Matsuri? Is that how that works, or are they gonna have it at the event?
I'm saying supposedly what I saw. This is what I saw. I don't know how correct this is necessarily, but they're going to hand out tickets that you can use to buy core sets at the booth if you're waiting in line for that event. So that way you get your Kiku box, and then you can buy a second one if you desire.
Okay, yeah, that's the main thing. It's I would like to get 2 boxes. 3 would be ideal, but maybe I'm just being super greedy,
I mean, you kind of need 3 cores to play the game properly. And do we know if it's limited to 1 or 2, though?
You can only buy 1 per wait in line.
You can only buy 1 per wait? Fuck.
Yep.
Okay. I enlisted help to, since I'm not... I actually decided to just not go to Gen Con because I was only going to be able to go Thursday anyway. I wasn't going to be able to participate in anything. I know I was going to be sad.
Wait, did you have tickets?
No, I didn't have tickets. I was thinking about buying tickets, and then I found somebody, and I was I enlisted their aid to just go buy me core sets since they were going all week anyway.
I think
it'll be all right.
So I'm there all 4 days.
It's only 2 people, so I'm afraid I'm gonna end up with just 2 core sets.
We'll try to get as many core sets between as much as possible because having core sets is important. I also think that the online client, from what I understand, is going to be up and running soon after Gen Con, because that's when Alciende is going to have the database 5 Rings DB up. If you want to chill for that a little bit, that's going to probably be one of the best deck builders for the game.
Yeah.
So once that's up, the API for that is loaded into the, I don't know what the client's going to be called, but it's sort of like Jinteki for L5R. That's all going to be loaded up in there so people can play right away.
Yeah. I'm gonna try and get 3 core sets beforehand, but I might end up with 2 and then be kind of sad.
I'll also be there all weekend, and it's gonna be 99% L5R. I signed up for the BattleCon World Championship too, and there's 0% chance I'm gonna feel up to it when it comes around, but I still have the ticket for it. So what the hell? Yeah, let's move on to the unicorn spoilers. So The Unicorn Clan are an interesting bunch here. Anyone from old 5R probably has like a little bit of traumatic memories of the unicorn and the old cavalry keyword, and how like utterly BS that felt. And it's returned, but it feels a little bit more fair in this game, I would say. So
Definitely.
like instead of like just being I get to assign all my guys after you assign all your guys, now it's I have the ability to reinforce very easily, as it were. So like it's not so much that I'm just avoiding you altogether as much as it is I have the ability to overpower you if need be by sending in contingent forces. And that feels really cool.
I think all of the effects that work with cavalry are work off of moving into conflicts. I don't recall if there's one that moves out. So
I don't think they have a single one that moves out.
I think that's cool. That means that like you can you can undercommit as unicorn and then move in as necessary. But it also means you can't pull people in and out after, like you couldn't commit everybody and then be like, oh, they're not going to block with anything, so I can pull my guys back, which would feel a little bit overpowered. But that goes right into their stronghold ability, which is right along the lines of Cav. Do you want to?
Who wants to start this time? Dan, you started last time, right? So I guess I'll start this time, and then Gentry can start when we do Scorpion.
Sure.
Let's go.
Scorpion's
on
so fun.
and talk about Golden Plains Outpost. Don't tease, Dan. Come on. Golden Plains Outpost. It is a unique stronghold. It is an outpost with the action during a military conflict. Bow this stronghold and choose a cavalry character you control. Move it to that conflict. It has 10 starting honor, plus 7 fate per turn, 10 influence, and the weakest defensive fortification of 0, plus 0 to the province that it is in. So obviously it's just like a castle in the middle of an open plain. There's no fortifications to be had. So this stronghold sort of gives you what old cavalry was as like a stronghold effect. It allows you to move your forces around and reinforce very easily, and it only works on cavalry units, but as you're going to find out, that's pretty much every unicorn unit. So that helps a lot. I think the stronghold is one of the most powerful, but it's offset by the fact that it's plus 0. So this sort of promotes a very aggressive unicorn strategy where you're trying to win before your opponent reaches your stronghold, so that plus 0 never actually matters.
I'll be honest, I'm not sure the plus 0 is too big a deal anyway, compared to like the plus 2 at most for most other strongholds. Like
plus 2 on average.
Plus 2 is pretty good, but like this ability is insane, like absolutely crazy compared to most of the other strongholds. Like it's probably the best stronghold.
Yeah, so this ability, like just like on its own, like ignoring the fact that it allows you to reinforce. Like, if you need to, you can just move a guy in if you need the extra strength to win. But it also essentially makes one character deny a rout or a covert if they are cavalry. Because if they are routed or sent home, you can just move them back in. If they are coverted, well, you can't declare them as a defender, but you can move them in afterwards. So it sort of like makes Unicorn extremely resilient to those two keywords, which is pretty cool and very powerful. So I think this is probably one of the most powerful stronghold effects we've seen.
Yeah, this was a little polarizing. I think when it first got spoiled, some people were like, "This is garbage," and then other people were like, "This is amazing." And yeah, I definitely lean more towards like, "This is amazing." There's a lot of things you can do with it. Just gives you a lot of flexibility because of all the unicorn cards have cav. A lot of them, a lot of the really powerful ones too. You're going to see a lot of interactions with moving in and out of conflict or moving into conflicts as well. So this facilitates that. Another thing you can do with this is you can move a bowed guy into a conflict that you couldn't defend, and that'll just save you an honor, which is sometimes worth it.
Yeah, that's cool, to deny an unopposed bonus. So yeah, I think you're going to probably use this every turn, and you're going to get something out of it, like almost every time. So that's like a really cool thing. A lot of move home effects. There's a lot of move home effects between the 6 neutral ones with rout and outwit, and then a lot of natural ones with like strength and numbers, and the radiant orator. There's a couple others I'm probably missing, but those are the big ones that come to my mind. And Move Home has been seeing a lot of waves in my games. So anything that just says like, hey, Move Home effects are less effective, must be pretty good. It's sort of like anti-bow in a sense.
So yeah, the 2 types of control, or I guess the 3 types of control in this game are elimination or discard, bowing effects and then send home effects, and so this is just straight counter send home effects, which is great.
Send homes are by far the most prevalent, I think.
Yep. It's probably send home, bow, and then removal.
Yep, definitely. So yeah, this is pretty sweet. Very flexible, good stronghold. Gentry, tell us about their province.
So, Endless Plains is the Unicorn province. It is a 2-strength province with the reaction after an attack is declared here. Break this province. Your opponent chooses an attacking character, discard that character. It is a water province. I don't know how to feel about this yet. It's really good if you are something like Phoenix and you can just display and you can just not defend and display, but it's not Phoenix, so that's sad. If you splash Phoenix for display, it's kind of cool. It can be good turn 1 if they're attacking with like a big character that they put a bunch of fate on. I wound up doing that in the one game I played against Unicorns so far. I had 4 provinces to choose from, and I ran my 2 fate, my 2-cost 2 fate character into an Endless Plains and was really sad, and lost that game horribly off of the tempo that generated. But I don't know. I feel like this card is much better the earlier you see it because you can set tempo early. So you kind of have to hope that they run into it early if you want the most out of it. And because your opponent chooses the attacking character that gets discarded, unless they send like one big character into a random province and it happens to be Endless Plains, then they'll usually be able to just get rid of like a 0 fate Chud that was going to die that turn anyway. So a lot of times I think this card ends up being kind of bad.
This is a super meta card too. So like Unicorn will run it to start, and then people will be worried about it, and then they stop running it because people were worried about it because they were too cautious. But it's a good. I think it's a good province. One rules note with it is if you trigger the action and break the province, the conflict still goes on. So you can actually move people in and or defend it, etc., to like prevent the ring claim if you want. But obviously, you have a broken province now, so that's the downside. It's a water province too, so that means you can't run Elemental Fury or Rally the Cause. That's a thing to consider because both of those are fairly good provinces as well.
Yeah, I think I've warmed up a bit to this province. At first, I'm like, that seems really bad, and obviously, if I'm against Unicorn, I'll play around it a bit. And while your opponent may play around it, it's still just like a case of you can't play around it all the time unless you want to just seed a lot of tempo, because like you might only have one guy ready, and you can only attack into an unknown province, and if it's Endless Plains, you're screwed. So I think it's like better than average, but I do also think it's kind of a meta province. I think if there's a point in time where like people are playing around it all the time, so then people will stop running it, like Unicorn players will stop running it if people are going to play around it because they can get more advantage out of Elemental Fury or another water province. But then like by the time the meta shifts and adjusts to Unicorn playing the other water provinces, then suddenly Endless Plains is back on the table because people are not playing around Endless Plains anymore. So it's going to be like a cycling province, I think, for that water slot. And you could also do some really cool things if you're like a Seeker of Water Unicorn. You could run like Elemental Fury, and then they'll hit the Elemental Fury, and then like it allows you to run like the full suite of tempo provinces, I would say. So like you can have everything just be like a fuck you for attacking me.
Right.
Equally, you can run a bunch of send home effects and single one card out. If you're really good and everything goes your way, you can like route 2 cards to get exactly what you want to die. In a perfect situation. That's hard to do.
What's the timing for that again?
So Endless Plains is you have to do it as soon as the attack is declared there. So like you can't send
home
people.
Right, you're right. I'm sorry. You're right.
Yeah. It would be really cool if it was just an action. I would love this card if it was just an action.
It'd be so powerful as an action. But yeah. I mean, it's balanced as it is. I think it's a good card. I think Unicorn would be happy to run it too because generally they don't really care about trading off provinces because they probably have more tempo than you.
Yeah, I was gonna say it is 100% a tempo province or a tempo faction from what I've seen so far. So like it makes sense as a card. It bothers me a little bit in that there are a lot of cases where it just doesn't do anything really.
Yeah, it's a little bit like Force of Will from Magic in a sense, right? You don't need to. It doesn't. It's like free tempo, but at the cost of like your life in a sense. because like your life in this game is provinces. So like, but like if you're going like for a full tempo game plan anyway, you don't care about losing a province. You just care about beating your opponent faster than he beats you.
This is like the NAPD of provinces, if everyone remembers that agenda from Netrunner. It's like you ran it because you did.
This is not the NAPD of provinces. In the NAPD of provinces, in order to break this province, your opponent has to give you like 2 fate.
Two fate. Well, I'm just thinking in the sense that like it's not something that you really care about. It's just in your deck because it has to be from a rules perspective, and it just gives you tempo if you lose it. Because like the runner is going to steal agendas, right? So if they happen to steal NAPD, it's a huge tempo hit. If they run into Endless Plains like unprepared, it's a huge tempo hit for them, and you probably get a huge advantage off of it. But
yeah, so it's gonna be based around that. So like just like how people started playing around NAPD and Netrunner, people will start playing around Endless Plains in this game. So it'll be it's a cool province. I don't want to say it's like amazing, but it's definitely has its uses.
All right.
Yeah.
On to Moto Youth. So this is the first of the Dynasty characters for Phoenix, for Unicorn.
Oh, Phoenix.
Oh, it's just all over the place today. The Phoenicorn?
My clan's so
like
good.
It's a horse on fire. All right. So Moto Youth is a 1 fate character with 2 military skill, 0 political skill, 1 glory. The Bushi and cavalry traits with the ability, This character gets +1 military skill during the first military conflict each round. So this is just a value 1-drop character for Unicorn. Well, notice too that all of the Moto cards for Unicorn have disproportionately high military skill, whereas the rest of the cards tend to be pretty balanced. So this is one of the few that's disproportionately higher for military, which suits some of the other cards that we've seen going forward. So it works with things like the Golden Potes or the Stronghold ability, and additionally, like with its own action, getting +1 mil during the first conflict. So it's +3. It's 3 military either on attack or defense, depending on whatever you use it in. Just a solid 1-drop. You're not going to be too upset about seeing this most of the time.
Yeah, I think 2 stats for 1 fate is about the par, the average. If you're getting 3 stats for 1 fate, then it's probably a decent character. So yeah, it's only good in military, but you have a lot of control over where you stick this guy. So just stick him in a military every turn. He'll probably be worth that 1 fate.
He does have 0 political skill, which is relevant because it means they don't go home during political fights. So that can be kind of important.
Yeah, he's like a Matsu Berserker who is a 3-dash. If I remember correctly, but instead of the dash, he's got 0, and his 1 military is situational. But I think I like this more than Matsu Berserker just because it has the cavalry trait, like let alone the fact that he's pretty much always going to have 3 military anyway.
Yeah, I think it's fair to assume this is 3 military pretty much every time you use it.
Yeah, and so that's a nice solid 1-drop. Let's go on. Another solid 1-drop. So this is Utaku Infantry. It is a 1-cost Dynasty character with 0 military, 0 political, 1 glory, and the Bushi trait. And you might be thinking, wait, isn't Unicorn aggressive? Why are they paying for a 0/0? Well, the Utaku Infantry gains +1 military and +1 political for each participating Unicorn character you control.
While this character is participating in a conflict.
While it's in a conflict. So like
it's a 1/1.
Yep, it's a 1/1 on its own. If you've got one other guy, it's a 2/2. If you've got 6 other guys, it's a 6/6. Or 6 other guys, it's actually a 7/7.
It's a 7/7, yeah.
Guys, it's a 6/6. So this is a pretty cool card. It's really great if you're going to go all in on like a Stronghold, for example. Even if you're attacking with 4 guys, a 1-cost 4/4 is pretty tough to beat. Only Dragon come close, and their card is limited and has a downside. So I think this is a fantastic 1-cost character. The only downside, I think, to this character for Unicorn is it does not have cavalry.
Yeah, that's definitely a big downside for it because you can't move it in, so you're going to have to commit it. This is also a 1-drop. I think you're okay with over-investing in a little bit because having it on the board with your other characters is where it gets its power. So you can just have it on the board. You can use it in your various conflicts just to get extra stats. Is so strong, and the balance is really, really key here. He doesn't just get plus military. He gets +1/+1, so you can use it in both types of conflicts, which is really important in this game. And really important for Unicorn especially because they want to have tempo and be able to attack twice, really.
Yeah, it seems like Unicorn kind of have some similar themes to Lion in terms of just going wide and wanting to have multiple characters out there in a fight in order to get more value out of their stuff. Yep. That's Otaku Infantry. Gentry, you're up.
So we'll go into the aggressive Moto. He is the first 2-cost character with 3 military and 0 political skill, 0 glory, and the Bushi and cavalry trait. And this card just states that this cannot be declared as a defender. This is actually probably one of the weaker cards in Unicorn. It's still okay, stat-wise. Like 3 military for 2 fate isn't bad. 0 political makes me a little sad, and it's not. But it at least doesn't get sent home. But it is stat-wise probably one of the worst cards that Unicorn has, and it'll probably get replaced later on. But for now, it's not bad.
So
It's a cavalry.
It's reasonable. Yeah, it's a cavalry. It's 3 military for 2 fate, so it's reasonable. It's just not spectacular in any particular way.
yeah, if you
0
compare
glory
this-
is kind of nice too, just because it doesn't care about dishonor.
If you compare this directly with Moto Youth, like Moto Youth has got the same stat line during the first military conflict and costs 1 fate less and also has 1 glory. But the cool thing about aggressive Moto is its downside is not necessarily that much of a downside for Unicorn because it simply says it cannot be declared as a defender. It can still be moved in by your stronghold or by other move-in effects or be charged in with the charge neutral event. So, like, the downside isn't that big, but still, this guy has just got, like, okay stats for 2 and a ability that is sometimes a downside.
I wonder if this was a 4-0 in testing, and that was like, oh my gosh, this is a little bit too good, until they brought it back.
Yeah, maybe.
But-
I mean, this card will probably be phased out once more Unicorn 2 drops come out.
For
But,
sure.
For now, it's kind of just like it's like more Moto Youths. More Moto.
More calves, more motos, things you
Yeah.
can pull out of your discard with a card we'll see later.
Yep. So, Dan, you're up.
All right, so I have the next 2 fate character is Border Rider. It's 2 fate with 2 military skill, 1 political, 1 glory, the Bushi and cavalry traits with the action ready this character. So we talk about bow effects on this podcast a lot, right?
Yeah,
This is
card's
an
nuts.
anti-bow effect on the card. It's just an action. You do it. You can fight with it twice. It ignores bow effects. Oh, this card's so great. It's got cav, so you can move it in with the stronghold. It synergizes with other cavalry abilities. Its stat line is okay. Not the best, but obviously you can put various attachments on it, and it can participate in different kinds of conflicts. It's just a solid 2-drop card. I think I rated it a little bit over the aggressive Moto, just in terms of its versatility, and then on top of that, its action ability is insane.
I love this card turn 1. So I'll tell you why. Because this card is basically 2 characters turn 1. In a usual setup, you only have like 2 characters turn 1. Unless you go full wide and don't put any fate on characters, which is kind of bad long term. So usually most players will only have 2 characters with a couple of fate points on them. This character you can attack with, ready, and then attack again, or defend with, and then attack. It basically essentially gives you an extra character turn 1 on a low character board where each character can typically only be used once. So this character is very likely to get you an unopposed ring turn 1. Or make your opponent play extra defensively.
Slight downside is that at 2 cost, it is open to being assassinated and or blackmailed.
I mean,
So-
are we going to just say that about every 2-cost character?
No, I just say that's a
Yes.
good one to do. That
Yeah,
because it's so functional.
Yeah, but this card's very, very good with Unicorn and some other synergies that they have. I think this is one of the better 2-drops that we've seen in the game.
Yeah, we'll also find out too later that it gets a lot of value out of any attachments that you put on it.
Yeah, because you double up on them.
Yeah, you can
Put a
double up
katana
or
on this, you
triple
get
up.
4 and 2 conflicts.
Yeah,
It's not bad.
as I say, it's a really, really solid card, and I think this is maybe one of the better 2-drops in the game just because of that.
Yep. I think this is up there with maybe not Neaton Adept level, but this is certainly a very powerful 2-drop not to be underestimated. So
Better
going
than
on
the
to-
Akodo Gunso, probably.
Yeah, ish. They do different things. I wouldn't compare them. So I'll move on.
They're
to the next
2
card.
drops with the same stats.
It's true, but like they do different things for 2 different strategies.
Well,
So-
I mean, if you're talking about how the Border Riders counts as 2 characters, right? The Gunso sort of gets you 2 characters too. Like, ideal situation, right? You buy a Gunso, he flips over like an obstinate recruit or something, so you basically got 2 characters for nothing, or 2 characters for 2. So the Border Rider and the Gunso function similarly for each of their different clans. but the Border Rider is probably a little bit stronger, just because I think he's more functional on board.
I'm not sold on comparing them in that way particularly, just because that's sort of one situation that the Gunso can create out of many. The Gunso is unsure. This is just a value 2-drop that gets double use out of itself. But yeah, moving on to the next 2-drop. This one maybe not as good as Border Rider, but still very good overall. This is Meishodo Wielder. It is a 2-cost character with 2 military, 2 political, 1 glory, the Shugenja and water traits, and you reduce its cost to play by 1 while you are the first player. So it becomes a 1-cost 2/1 if you are first player. And it's a Shugenja. That's always relevant. Those are always handy to have around. So a 1-cost 2/2 is pretty good. A 2-cost 2/2 is so-so. So it's a really good card if you're going first, and a okay card if you're going second. So it's probably worth running just for the times when you're going first. Because if you're not going first this turn, you're probably going first next turn. You can just leave it in your provinces and get a value card next turn.
Yep.
Also, as Unicorn, you tend to just go first a lot anyway. So,
yep.
Again, something else we'll find out later, but it's okay. Yeah, this card ends up being a lot of value. Like, yeah. I don't think there's ever a point in time when this won't be run and get value. So.
Yeah, it's just a nice card. It's, again, if you're going first, this is a great card. If you're going second, it's just an okay card, and just an okay card is just fine for the core set environment. We may see better cards later on down the line, but for now, I imagine this will stick around for a while. That's Meishodo Wielder. Gentry, I think you're next.
I believe so. I have the Shinjo Outrider, a 2-fate character with 2 military and 2 political, 2 glory, Bushi, cavalry, and scout keywords, and the action during a conflict, or traits rather. The action during a conflict, move this character to the conflict. So it's just another move effect.
Wow, more moves.
It's pretty, yeah, I know, amazing in Unicorn. It's decent. The stats for 2 aren't terrible. They're not great, but they're not terrible. They're about average. The fact that it can move into any conflict, though, is pretty good, and it just gives you more ability to maneuver around and kind of make sure that you win every conflict that you want to win.
Yeah, this card seems really good once it's honored, too, because it's got 2 glory. So it's a 4/4 that you can just reinforce whenever without needing to use your stronghold.
This is true. If you can manage to honor it, then this card becomes really good. Honoring isn't quite as easy in Unicorn as it is in some other decks, but
I mean, you've got your
you
core
can definitely
games
do it.
The Fire Ring.
Just core games of fire, but
yeah,
still.
core games and firing are like the major ways to do it, but yeah, it's not bad though.
Yeah, no, I'd rate this as a pretty solid 2-drop. It's pretty good.
The balanced stats I think really help make this card because it's functional both in military and political conflicts, which means you can attack but in either or, you can defend in either or. It's redundancy in terms of move effects if this gets sent home twice for some reason between your stronghold and this card. But I mean, yeah, I
think your opponent just doesn't. I think your opponent just doesn't do that at that point and waste all the cards.
Why? I'm just gonna keep sending this guy home because I like spending fate and burning cards. And at that point, you're like, okay, thanks.
You get it. You spent 2 routes. You get it. She's home. She's home for this conflict. Well done.
Yeah, confirmation on the gender for Outrider. I don't think we do.
She looks very female.
You say that about the claim champion,
are you assuming
but
that
I still think you're
All
right.
Sarnite is a confirmed female Gentry. You can't.
If you say so,
that.
She has the most glorious beard I've ever seen, though.
It's not a beard. That's a mempo, and you're crazy.
All right.
All right, let's move on. Dan, you have our first 3-drop.
I do. So this is the Giver of Gifts. It's a 3-fate character with 2 military skill, 3 political skill, the courtier trait, and 2 glory. With the action, choose an attachment you control. Move that attachment to an eligible character you control. So this is going to be really cool once we get into the conflict cards and all of the unicorn attachments, because some of them have multiple effects from moving in and out of conflicts, so you want to be able to use them multiple times. Additionally, because you can shift things around, you can move something from a character with no fate or maybe participate in a conflict that round to somebody else, which is pretty great. Stat line is actually okay on a 3-drop, I think, and especially if you honor it, it's very strong. It's not balanced stats, but 2/3 is fine, especially considering that Unicorn already have a few stronger military cards, and additionally, it's a courtier, which helps turn on some of the courtier cards.
Yeah, 2/3/2 is a pretty standard 3-cost stat line. I think 2 in one stat, 3 in the other, and then 1 or 2 glory is about average of what we've seen across the board out of the core set. And like you said, this ability is pretty sweet because it allows you to preserve attachments. So if you play a Katana turn 1, and this guy shows up, or this gift giver shows up, you can basically preserve that Katana for as long as the gift giver is in the game. So that's handy. And Courtier, again, yeah, not bad.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it seems decent. I think this is definitely a card that I'd much rather only see like one of in a game, though. So I'm actually not positive if this is a 3 of in my particular Unicorn deck, just because there's a lot of points in time where it's just not going to get any value, and there's no reason for me to have it.
It's not cavalry, so that's important to note too.
Yeah,
so you can't use it with your stronghold ability, but it's strong.
I think its stat line's solid enough that you probably want to run 3 of it for now out of the core set. But
yeah, it might be out of the core set, but yeah, I definitely cut it as it goes on. Yeah, even in core set, I might consider taking 1 or 2 of them out.
2x seems reasonable.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's just for a 2/3 courtier with 2 glory, so it has the potential to just be really big on board with an upside ability. Is just pretty solid.
Yeah,
it's definitely a decent card.
Speaking of extending value and stuff, let's talk about Ide Trader, who is a 3-cost, 1 military, 3 political character who has 1 glory and is a courtier. And he has the text box reaction: after 1 or more characters move to a conflict in which this character is participating, select 1, gain 1 fate or draw 1 card, limit once per conflict. So this is a economic ability on your 3-drop, and the stats are worthwhile considering it has a very solid economic ability. So you can basically always trigger this if you want using your stronghold. And really cool yet, if you move your Ide Trader into a conflict somehow, you can trigger it off of his moving into the conflict.
He triggers himself.
He triggers himself if he moves into a conflict afterwards. It also works if your opponent moves a character into a conflict as well. It doesn't have to be you. So that's pretty sweet. Limit once per conflict is just to prevent this card from being like super busted. But if you get him into multiple conflicts somehow, like with another move trick, you can trigger this multiple times a turn. But that requires a lot more work, and that seems really fair.
Yeah,
so I think this is a very good economic 3-drop.
This card didn't have that limit. I think you would just win as Unicorn every time, because you just get an Ide Trader and then move like 3 guys in a turn and just get 3 or 4 free fate every turn off of this card. It'd be gross.
Or a combination of fate and cards, depending on whatever you're doing. It's just insane.
I mean, let's be honest. You're going to take the fate every time.
I don't know.
Almost every time. There are times where you take cards, but generally, if you get this like turn 1 or 2, you're just taking the fate because it's just too good.
Yeah.
It gives you too much tempo to not.
Yeah,
but yeah, this card is really solid. Even at once per conflict, like getting 1 free fate a turn over the course of like 2 or 3 turns, this card becomes ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an extra fate basically means you get to keep a character around for an extra turn you otherwise wouldn't have. So that's pretty sweet.
That's a fun card. It's a very fun economic card.
Yeah, it's a solid card. Again, Unicorn just like have all this movement stuff, and then they get money for moving stuff. It's
money.
Yeah, they get economic benefit.
They get karma. Is like fate's like sort of like karma. I don't know. Anyway,
I've heard people call it karma. I don't see
that makes me. It sounds weird to me too.
I think it's more of like a destiny sort of thing rather than a karma sort of thing. But I mean, karma also makes sense with Buddhism and all that. So let's go on. That was me.
Yes,
so
I would get a Warrior Poet as a 3 fate character. 2 military, 2 political skill with 2 glory and the Bushi and cavalry traits. With the action, while this character is participating in a conflict, each participating character controlled by your opponent gets -1 military and -1 political strength until the end of the conflict. So this character, if your opponent defends in any way, shape, or form, is basically inherently a 3-cost 3/3 is how I'd look at it. If they're not defending, then you're probably okay because they're not defending, so it doesn't really matter. And if they contribute anything more than a single unit to the combat, she becomes very, very good, because then she's getting rid of 2 military, 2 political, or 3 and 3, and then I almost just see it as those being stat buffs on her, just making her like a 4/4 or a 5/5, and at that point you're paying 3 fate for like a 4/4 or a 5/5. You're more than happy to do that every day of the week. Like I would do that in any other deck as well. It's fantastic, and it's a cavalry, which is even better. So you can move this in and surprise people.
Nope, I generally agree with that sentiment. This card's been pretty sweet in the games I've played. You don't have to be attacking to use it as well. I know you said defending a lot, but just to be clear, you can play this on defense as well. So against like weenie decks, like a lion deck where they have a lot of 2 military guys, she basically cuts your opponent's force in half. That's pretty sweet.
It's like a more functional Isawa Atsuko when we were looking at the Phoenix cards last time, because she's only in Void. Obviously, the poet has to be in the conflict for her to be able to use her action. But you can do things like you could even attack with her or use her in a different conflict and not use her action. And then because she has Cav, you can move her into the conflict with your stronghold and then trigger the action again. So she's even functional while bowed in some cases.
Actions are still once per turn, but Atsuko's sort of.
No, I'm saying if you hadn't used it, if
Yeah.
you hadn't used it, and because of whatever reason, and then if you wanted to get max value out of it in a different conflict, you could. So.
Yeah, and the big thing is that no matter where it is on the board, if you are in a military conflict, if it's a military conflict, so for half of the conflicts during the game, your opponent has to play around it no matter where it's at, solely because your stronghold exists and you can move it in, and you have the ability to move it in. So even if it's sitting in your, sitting on your board, like not participating, it can get value just out of your opponent has to think about it being there, about the potential of it coming into the conflict.
Yep, I think it's a great card overall. Atsuko's sort of like a more harder to trigger, but more like explosive version of this. So I think just the consistency of this card makes it pretty worth mentioning.
Also, the art is fantastic.
Oh, the art!
I love the art for this card.
Art's one of some of my favorite.
Yeah, it's up there. This artist has done quite a few of the different pieces. I think they did Yokuni as well, and they did Atsuko, I think, as well. So like it's the same artist for the same kind of card effect, which is interesting. Yeah. So we got a unique here.
So this is the first unicorn unique. This is Yutako Yamino, or is it Yasmino or Yamino?
It's Yumino, according to the GenCon deck list.
That's right.
So Utaku Yumino. This
didn't get updated in the thing I'm looking at, but she is a 3-fate character with 2 military skill, 2 political skill, and 3 glory. It's crazy. The Bushi, Battle Maiden, and Cavalry traits. And then with the action, I'm reading this off the French thing. So during a conflict, discard a card from your hand, and then she gets +2/+2 until the end of the conflict. And this is limit once per conflict.
That's correct. Yeah, and on the video here, I've got my doctored version of the card, which is just me translating the card to English, and otherwise it's mostly the same. Yeah, this card is super sweet.
This card is very, very strong. Yeah, well, and also so what's cool about Unicorn is their balance. Like you would think that where Lion tends to overdoes it on military with some of their stuff, Unicorn has all these really balanced characters, and this is one kind of exemplifies that. Additionally, some of their characters have decently high glory stats, so that way you can get super buffs out of them. She has 3 glory and 2 skill. This is one of the few cards we've seen where they have more glory than skill. Just across the board. Akoto Gunso is sort of like that too, but if you honor her, she's a 5/5, and then she's a very easy to trigger ability to go to 7/7. Even without the honor, you can make her a 4/4 very, very easily. This is just a very, very functional card on a 3-drop. It's almost a 4-drop ability on a 3-drop card. So you're outside of assassination range with this thing. It's a unique, so that way you can discard extra copies to gain fate. This card's just great.
Yep. And I think with Unicorn, you can draw a lot of cards, like with E-Day Trader and another card we're going to get to later. You might also be bidding highly, except for if you're against Lion or Crane, who can punish you for bidding highly. So like overall, like you're gonna have extra cards you can discard, and like this assassinate's not useful right now. +2/+2. This Way of the Unicorn, I don't need this. This is the final push. +2/+2. I don't have enough fate for cavalry reserves, which we'll get to. +2/+2. A lot of cards you can that aren't always useful. You can just ditch for +2/+2, and that's better than a lot of cards. Like, not many cards can outvalue +2/+2 per card.
I think
it's about par. Yeah. Outside of like some specific neutrals might be better than that, but yeah, I think it's a fantastic card.
And with balanced stats, she's resilient to things like outwit and rout, which means she's difficult to deal with for other control effects. So yeah, all in all, very good card. You're going to be really happy to see her whenever you pull her in the Dynasty phase.
Yeah, pretty much.
So we're going from a really balanced character to the most imbalanced character in the game, stats-wise. We're going to talk about Moto Horde. It's a 4-cost Dynasty character with 6 military skill and dash political. 1 glory. It is Bushi, Army, and Cavalry traded. And it has the text box, no attachments except weapon. So this card is the extreme of imbalanced. I think there's no character in the game that is more one-sided than Moto Horde. Now, it's 4 fate for 6 military skill, and that's all it is. You can't use this in political at all. Even when honored, it's still dash political. So it's 6 or 7 military, or I guess you could say 5 to 7 military if it's dishonored. For 4. And I don't know if that's a great return on value, but then again, 6 military is a lot of military. That's most of a Casada for 4. So it has some value, but like I don't think it's like cost efficient per se. Not as much as it could be.
This is a card you never want to buy.
Yeah, no, this is charge. This card is charge me. Paying 1 for 6 military is a very good return on investment. Paying 4 for it, not so much.
I mean, yeah, it's a card that I kind of feel bad most of the time when it shows up. But equally, you do end up with more military conflicts than you do political conflicts in Unicorn. Just because of a card that they have. So, I mean, it's possible to get more value out of this solely because you can just kind of make sure that the conflicts you want to be military are military. But equally, having dash political kind of makes me sad. I'd also like to state that if a horde of horsemen with giant swords walked into my court, I probably would let them do whatever they wanted.
The art in this is
the dash political is confusing to me.
They just go home bowed. They're like, sorry, we interrupted.
Sorry, didn't mean to crash the court. Let's go home, and we'll come back when there's war. Call us when there's warfare. The Moto are very courteous.
Bushi and Cav traits, so obviously Stronghold synergy.
Good synergy with route as well, like charge and route, and there's a lot of like neutral event synergy with this card. So like, I don't want to say it's like bad outright, but I don't think you want to pay 4 for it. It's kind of like the Taturi of 4 drops, right? In Lion, you don't buy Taturi, you discard him and Spirit Call him out, or you charge him out. And this is kind of the same case with Moto Horde. You either charge him out or you use some other shenanigans to get him into play.
Yep.
I mean, I think this is definitely a card that like you play out of core, but again, this is almost certainly a card that like gets cut down later.
I mean, maybe
unintended.
There's an army deck later on down the line where you just run a bunch of army cards.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's possible.
They did that in Game of Thrones.
Worth noting as well that no attachments except weapons means that you can't pacify this, you can't cloud its mind, you can't do a lot of things except for give it weapons, and weapons are generally beneficial. So it's kind of immune to like any of your opponent's negative attachments.
Please cloud the mind on my Moto Horde.
Unfortunately, you cannot.
Darn.
Yep. We got another unique. Gentry, take it away.
The new unique, Shinjo Tatsuyo. He's a 4-cost character with 3 military and 3 political strength, 2 glory. He has the Bushi cavalry and scout traits. In the action, during a conflict, choose this character and up to 1 other character you control, and move those characters to the conflict. It's just more movement effects, which are pretty good, as it turns out. His stats are kind of bad for a 4-drop, but considering the ability, it's probably okay.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
powerful ability.
That's about all there is to say. Yeah, you just move 2 guys. And they don't have to be cavalry this time, so there's no restriction on who you can move. You can just pick anybody up. So if you have that infantry just sitting around, and you happen to have like a couple of guys already in the battle, and you need him to move in, this is your guy.
Just slide him in. Yeah, he's just pulling in, X amount of skill into whatever conflict he wants because he's balanced. Again, this is another balanced unicorn character with a very solid ability. The movement effect, I think it's hard, unless you really think about it, it's hard to kind of get across how good these movement effects are just because of how much flexibility they give you. I think there was a little bit of argument as to where, like, are these even good on some places? And really the benefit that the movement effects give you is that you can mix and match exactly how much you want to commit. Whereas with other clans, you have to do all the math ahead of time. Unicorn can kind of figure some things out on the fly, and which can be really, really important because you need to kind of gauge how much you're going to need on defense or how much your opponent is committing to various things. And so just having flexible cards like this is really important. Also, you can pull in things like your E-Day Trader to trigger that guy.
There's a lot to be said out of getting value for the stats that you have and not just having really big raw stats. I think that's a lot of the reason that we don't like Moto Horde as much. There's a lot of clans, like Lion in particular is the easiest go-to clan, where they just have a stupid amount of stats, but Unicorn have, reasonable stats that aren't quite up to Lion, but are reasonably close. But I think they get a lot more value out of them because you can pick and choose where it goes and when it goes to the fight, and you don't have to overcommit. And I think that's the main problem that some other decks like Lion have, is sometimes you just have to overcommit because you don't know what's going to happen. Whereas Unicorn can decide, after things are happening, whether they're able to commit, so they don't overcommit nearly as much, and you get more. You just get more value out of the stats that you have.
Yep.
Yeah, the Unicorn operate more like a surgical knife, whereas the Lion operate more like a club. Same thing with the crab in that sense.
Crab or a Tetsubo, I guess.
Yeah, straight up Tetsubo.
Oh, so I get
thing.
the clan champ.
Oh yeah, you do again. One other thing though, before we move on. So the thing about Shinjo Tatsuo's ability is you have to be able to target himself to move into the conflict. So if he's already in a conflict, you can't use his ability to pull someone else into a conflict, because in that case he's not affected as a target of his ability and therefore can't be chosen. So he has to be outside of a conflict.
I think that's fine though, because I don't think you ever send him to a conflict.
Yeah, there might be times where he gets roped in by a doji challenger or something, and then that turns off his ability.
Yeah, there's exactly 2 cases. Is if you're playing against something like Phoenix, where you expect a Cloud the Mind to happen, and you just want to make sure that he gets there, or you're playing against something like Crane, and you're afraid of Doji Challenger. But I think those are most of the cases where this card
it's just worth
gets actually sent to a.
It's worth knowing that he's in the conflict, then he can't use his ability.
Yeah, it is worth
the rules as be. All right, let's move on to the clan champion.
I'm going to horribly butcher this. All right, so this is Shinjo Altansarnai.
Altansarnai, you got it.
Shinjo Altansarnai. We're calling her Shinjo Alternator-san. She's a 5-cost character with 5 military skill, 4 political, the Bushi, Cavalry, and Champion traits, 2 glory, with the reaction: after you break a province during a military conflict in which this character is participating, your opponent chooses a character he or she controls, discard that character. So I think a lot of people saw this and they were like, oh my gosh, this is removal effects, and they kind of went overboard with it. This ability is good, but you kind of really need to support it. It's at most going to trigger, let's say it triggers 3 times during the game, because the only time you're breaking is on military conflicts. You're getting rid of 3 characters, but that could have been a character that your opponent already blocked with and didn't have any fate, so you have no control over that. So the ways to kind of manipulate her ability to your advantage are playing things like Fallen in Battle, are playing things like Assassination, to limit the amount of characters that your opponent can pick in order to discard. But the trample over effect is can be powerful if you pull that off, and her stat line is okay. So, again, I actually don't know if this is a character you ever really buy. I think this is another very like high value charge target. When you can, get her ability to fire off. What's funny, it's funny. I feel a little bit weird, or feel not as good about her card as I do the rest of the unicorn cards. Like the rest of the unicorn cards seem awesome and like super balanced and whatever. And I mean, she obviously has balanced stats, but her just ability just doesn't like scream overpowered like Yokuni does, or Kazada's not overpowered, but I mean that type of thing, that type of really game-breaking effect that when it's on the board, your opponent really has to worry about it.
Yeah.
Equally, I think you can get a lot of value out of it. I mean, the only problem I see with the card really is that your opponent gets to choose what character they discard. But I think the value in it anyway comes from surprising your opponent with this card, or sending this in, early on in the game when your opponent doesn't have a lot of units on the board. So no matter what you kill, it's going to be value. But it also depends on how your opponent is playing and what they're playing. So, stat-wise, it is kind of bad compared to most of the other clan champions. So that's a little sad. But I think the big thing to note, and I mean, some people don't think as highly about the card as I do. But when we get to cavalry reserves, this is the optimal cavalry reserves target and can really swing tempo a lot.
I think the thing with this card is in a vacuum, it's a really narrow ability with a very minor effect. Because it only works when you break a province on attack, because you can only break a province on attack and only during military conflicts. Your opponent gets to choose what's discarded, so like Dan said, in a vacuum, they just choose whatever zero fate character that's already bowed that they defended with. Now, this effect is actually very explosive if you combo it with Assassination and Fallen in Battle. And I've seen it do some tremendous work just with one of those cards, let alone both at once. So if you're breaking a province, chances are you're winning by 5 and more. You can trigger Fallen in Battle to kill the target they would have killed with Alton Sarnai's reaction. But instead of being able to do that now they have to choose a character who's ready outside of the conflict. Because you're Unicorn, you're probably going first, you're probably doing your military first with Alton Sarnai. And she's also a pretty good charge target and has some other shenanigans in Unicorn that can really get her some real value. That said, balanced stats that are actually lower than Yokuni's across the board, and the narrowness of her ability kind of makes me want to put her on the lower end of clan champions overall, but I do think that this ability is situationally really strong, and even game-winning. So don't underestimate it or you will be in trouble.
Yeah, I think if Unicorn get ahead and and they have the removal effects to make her ability like more powerful, it just kind of snowballs because you're not going to have anything on the board to be able to do anything, and they're just kind of like, oh, I have all my horses here, and I'm just running over all your provinces.
Yeah. I mean, it is a tempo effect in a tempo deck, so it makes sense, and it helps your win condition.
In a way,
so I mean, I think it's fine. I don't know if it's as amazing as it could be, but I think it's fine considering the rest of the deck.
In a way, this card made Fallen in Battle much more playable, so that's a win in my book.
Also, I don't care what anybody says. That is an amazing beard.
It's not a beard.
Look at that thing. Dude. It's a fantastic beard.
You're so wrong.
I have never seen an image of this card that doesn't look like that.
Moving on. Conflict cards. Ide Messenger is our second Unicorn conflict character. The other one we know is Ayuchi Wayfinder, but we don't know what he does yet. But we can assume he's probably 1 cost because Ayuchi comes after Ide in alphabetical order, so he has to be 1 or 0 cost. Anyway, Ide Messenger is a 2-cost conflict character with 1 military, 2 political, 0 glory, and the courtier trait. And action during a conflict, spend 1 fate. Choose a character you control, move that character to the conflict, and he has 1 influence.
She has 1 influence?
Yeah. The messenger has 1 influence. The gender-neutral messenger has 1
The gender-neutral messenger.
Yes.
So this is a bad card in Unicorn.
It's a bad card in Unicorn, but 1 influence makes it a pretty decent card in other splashes.
Yeah.
So why is this a bad card in Unicorn? Well, it's a movement effect that you have to pay 3 for, because you have to pay 2 and put this card into play, and then you have to spend a fate to move a guy. in Unicorn, your Stronghold does that for free. You have other characters that move stuff for free. And honestly, you have other movement effects we're going to get to in the Conflict deck that are also much cheaper than this. So this card is like almost strictly I want to have movement, but I don't have any infection. I'm going to go Unicorn to get some extra movement. And 1 influence makes that a very good choice. Now, even then, you're still paying 3 for a move, and that's not amazing, but you get what you can get.
The whole conversation about conflict characters last time, it's like, this is 2 fate for not a lot of stats, and then you got to pay extra for the ability. It's like, oh, how am I really using this card?
It is.
But, maybe someone gets value out of the conflict characters. It gets value out of this card. I don't know. Maybe some other faction will want to be able to have the flexibility, or somebody wants the flexibility that this card offers.
It's basically standard 2-drop stats, so like the stats aren't even subpar here. I don't think this really suffers from conflict tax as much as other characters. It's just that it's expensive to do a very basic thing and get some okay stats with it. So yeah, I don't think you run this in Unicorn. You might run it if you really want movement to, like, say route really pisses you off. You can spend 3 fate to ignore route.
Just counter route.
Yep. It's not, I don't want to say it's terrible, but it's certainly expensive for what it does.
Yep.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not even sure if there's too many other decks I'd play it in, just because it is really expensive for what it does.
Yep. All right, let's move on to attachments.
So the first attachment for Unicorn is Favored Mount. It is a 1-cost attachment that gives you 1 military and no political skill. It is a creature. Attached to a character you control. The attached character gains cavalry, and the action during a conflict about this attachment, move attached character to the conflict. So it's just more movement effects. It makes the character cavalry, which is vaguely relevant, but most of so far all we've seen that's relevant for that is the 1 movement effect on your Stronghold, and that kind of becomes moot for the most part when you read this card and you find out that it has a movement effect built in. Although it is cool for the trader. You could throw this on a trader and you could theoretically get his effect off twice in a turn pretty consistently, or at least once in a turn, no matter what. And it makes him slightly better in military, which is not great, but that's fine. But it's a good card. It's a movement effect. It does exactly what the E-Day Messenger does, but for 1 less fate, and it gives your opponent, and it gives you +1 military, and it's permanent on that character theoretically. Should it not get let go and that character not die, of course.
It dies to Doomblade.
It can also be moved around with
the Giver of Gifts.
With the Giver of Gifts, yeah. So it's possible that you get even more value out of this than it's really worth.
Yeah, so I think I treat this card as anti-route yet again, because like paying 1 for +1 military, unless it's breaking a province that otherwise wasn't, I'm not generally going to go for that. But if my opponent just routed home my guy, I'm going to be like, alright, I'm going to give him a favored mount, and then threaten to next action, move him back in if my opponent doesn't do something. So again, Unicorn are extremely resilient to move home effects, and yeah, just adding mobility to a guy without mobility is really good. This is also 1 influence, so like, if you were going to splash the E-Day Messenger, you might as well splash this first, and then if you have extra influence to spare and you still want movement, then you splash the E-Day Messenger. So, yeah, E-Day Messenger seems like a pretty niche card compared to this.
Favored mount, less niche, a little bit more usable.
Yep.
Yeah,
1 cost
really
attachment.
So that seems
I
alright.
get.
This one I think you will splash.
I got some fun cards.
I don't see any reason to
got all the
splash
good
E-Day
cards,
Messenger when you
Yes.
can splash. Oh, I'm sorry, we forgot. This is 1 influence too.
I just
by the
mentioned
way.
it.
Yeah, he mentioned
Okay,
it.
I'm sorry, I missed that. But yeah, as I say, I don't see any reason to splash E-Day Messenger ever when you can just splash 3 favored mount, which is way better.
If you really want the anti-go home tech.
I mean, yeah,
Or
if
you
you
want
want 6
mobility.
cards.
More
Or
mobility tech.
yeah, this is really good though.
You're like super mobile crab deck for whatever reason. All right.
Hey, that's pretty sweet.
It could be. All right. So the next attachment is Spyglass. It is a 1-cost attachment that gives you 0 military skill, 1 political skill. The traits Item and Gaijin, which I thought it was funny when I first saw this card. Reaction: after attached character commits to a conflict or moves to a conflict, draw 1 card. Limit twice per round. this is one of the best value attachments in the game because it helps generate card advantage. And you can move it around with like the Giver of Gifts and just this card is so fun.
You put this on a 1 or 2 fate guy, you're pretty much getting guaranteed 2 to 3 card draw depending on your movement shenanigans. If you put this on the Shinjo Outrider, the Border Rider, the one that readies, then you're pretty much guaranteed to get 2 cards a turn until they assassinate that character. So
you could do it on the Outrider too. Like you move it in, like it goes into a conflict and then goes home, and then like in another conflict, like you move him in and then it goes home, and that's your 2 draws.
Yeah, so there's lots of ways you can trigger the 2 draws in Unicorn. Even outside of Unicorn, you might splash this just for more card draw. Turning 1 fate into multiple cards is pretty good. And I've personally seen, I think in a game I played against Alex, how many cards did I draw with 2 spyglasses? Like 9 or 10?
I think we determined it was 9.
9? Yeah, I think it was 9. So I paid 2 fate and drew 9 cards off of it. And that's some pretty wicked value. It's not terribly hard to do that in Unicorn either.
No, it's not hard at all.
So, this card is crazy good. And 2 influence, totally splashable in a lot of decks. Dragon might like this because they've got a lot of ready tech. Lion might like this with like Sashimono. Crab like this with the Mountain Does Not Fall. As well as their Steadfast Witch Hunter, which readies somebody. So there's a lot of reason to expect this card. And this is one of the cards I think that will make Unicorn Splash sort of compete with Dragon Splash, which I'm happy to see. Anything that makes Dragon not Ubiquitous Splash is pretty cool. So yeah, this and Favored Mount and another card we're going to get to really, really sell this Splash as a solid one for just about everybody.
You get the last attachment, Travis.
Yay! Another silly, dull thing that's just stats. So this is Born in War. It's a 2-cost attachment that gives you plus X military and plus 0 political. It is a condition. It can only be attached to a cavalry character, and X is equal to the number of unclaimed rings. So if it is the first conflict, there are 4 unclaimed rings. Because the other one is contested and not unclaimed, it gives you plus 4 military. As more and more rings are claimed, that military bonus becomes less and less. So for 2, this is kind of lukewarm. 2 for 4 is decent in the first conflict, but if you anything past the first conflict, this card is just not good. 1 influence as well, so it's splashable, but you can only put it on cavalry, which basically no other clan has. So this is basically Unicorn only for the time being. So I don't think this is amazing. I think it's okay. Conflict X can be really good right now. There's a lot of cards you want to run and not that many card slots. So I think 9 times out of 10 this doesn't make my Unicorn list. But if you want more military, here you go.
Yeah, it's really mediocre, I think. But, it's an attachment. You'll play it for a little bit and maybe replace it or maybe not run it at all. I don't know. It's okay. It's not exciting like the Spyglass was exciting.
So another thing here is you can Giver of Gifts this attachment around. So you can give someone the gift of being born in war.
The art is funny though. I like the art, like the little kid swinging the sword while all the motos go out.
Yeah, the art on this is great. I don't know. Yeah, this card is okay. I think that's pretty fair. I think my main issue with it is just that it costs 2.
Yep. I mean, if this costs 1, it'd be really bonkers.
Borderline. It's not even necessarily like the cost for the effect so much as just having 2 fate to put this on a character is going to be hard to do. I think I'd much rather just have another character in most cases.
Yeah.
Or have or use the 2 fate on any other card. But most of the time, I'd rather have the fate that I would use on this card on a character somewhere probably.
Yeah, I mean it's not terrible. It's sort of like where Height of Fashion is. It's a 2-cost attachment, and Let Go is a very strong card that will see a lot of play, I think.
Oh, Dice to Doomblade, right?
Yeah, so Dice to Doomblade, but it's a 2 for 0 trade with Let Go. So you want to be really careful with 2-cost attachments, and I don't think this is impactful enough. I think Sashimono is even just barely impactful enough, and I'm starting to take those out of my decks now. So it's oh god.
Yeah.
I don't know. If it weren't an attachment, like if this were a X military skill conflict character, I might play this. But because it's an attachment, it's got a lot of counters to it. And we've even seen the Scorpion card now that even takes a card. It's like the Scorpion guy can just dishonor themselves and take your Born in War.
And steal your
take your childhood.
Yeah.
Literally steal your childhood.
Yeah, what happens there?
The
Interesting.
Scorpion steals your childhood. And
Brutal.
gains plus X military, and you lose plus X military. So,
Well, he's not going to have calves, so...
Yeah. That's true.
He could though. What if you're splashing unicorn and you gave him a favorite mount?
He has a favorite mount, so
Ooh.
you give him the favorite mount preemptively, and then you dishonor him and steal
the
Born in War.
Guys, that's the most convoluted thing, but that's terrifying.
Okay, so because it's cavalry character only, and that always checks unless the Scorpion character is cavalry, they can't equip this. So he basically makes you forget your childhood. You lose your childhood.
Brutal.
Anyway, this card's kind of mediocre. It's not bad, but it's not great either. Speaking of not bad but not great, tell us about Breakthrough.
Yep, we get Breakthrough. It is a 0-cost event with the reaction after the resolution of your first conflict this phase as the attacking player. If that conflict broke a province, immediately declare your second conflict for this phase. Yeah, I don't know how to rate this card. I've never gotten to use it or seen it be used in Unicorn. I've never heard of anybody using this card. Okay, that would be the first time I've ever heard of anybody using this card. I don't think it's good. I'm inclined to say that it's bad, because I'm not sure why you would need to take your second conflict immediately. I'm not sure why that's any better than just waiting and taking your second conflict after your opponent's conflict.
So
the situation I played this in, it was single core. It was like the single core while we were testing, and I broke a province. I was like, sweet, I can use Breakthrough. And so I played it, and then that was my political conflict, and then I had a military conflict, so I swung in with my guys and ran right into an entrenched position, and was sad.
I was just like,
it was
literally
face down, so it's like there's so many bad things that can happen when you attack a province.
There's exactly one situation I can think of. This is really good, and that's like you've gotten near the end of the game, and you go through and swing through on your opponent's third province so that you can get to the stronghold, but you have 3 broken provinces. Oh no! And your opponent has a bunch of guys on the board. So instead of letting them get their first conflict after your conflict, after you've gone first this turn already, you use Breakthrough so that you can break their stronghold before they can break your stronghold. That is the most ridiculously specific situation I can come up with, and that is the only time I can think of to make Breakthrough really worth playing in a deck.
This is a win more card, right? Like this is the actual definition of win more.
Yeah, this is like definitionally a win more card. This is like in some situations where you would normally win anyway, probably, or where you would normally have a good chance to win anyway, just win for sure. But like,
sometimes claiming a ring can be important. I could see a situation where claiming a ring before your opponent could be important, but I think in general this is just a tempo card you don't really need in your deck for the most part. Like I said, it was fun to play the one time, and then it didn't actually get me a second province, so I was really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think another niche use for this card is you can combo rings. So you could attack first with Void, remove a Fate off a guy, and then Breakthrough, attack with Water, bow that guy. But come on. Yeah, it's a really niche card. I'm not sure if it makes the cut. Like I said before, conflict decks are really tight. There's a lot of good conflict cards that aren't as niche as Breakthrough, and probably do more for winning more than Breakthrough does for winning more. So I don't know. This card seems not great.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's not great. I think I don't run it at all.
Yeah.
Well, it also requires you to have people ready
to
fight with on your second one. So you can't swing the team and then bring the team in again.
But there's some Unicorn have some pretty good ways to that. We've got the character that readies himself. You can have other readying effects available. Wink, wink.
But you need one character to be able to declare conflict.
Yeah.
So one ready character.
Yeah, you have to have at least someone still ready. You can have a
or you just ambush a conflict character anyway.
Yeah. There's just ways you could do it, but yeah, it's It's super niche.
I got
That's all there
all
is
the
to
cool
it.
cards this time.
You did get all the cool cards. I've looked ahead, and you get all the remaining cool cards.
Well, no, this is the last one. This is the last super cool card.
No,
right?
it's not.
Oh, no,
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 it's
no,
not.
no, no.
No.
Oh my god, I got all the cool cards.
Yes.
Wow.
All right, so tell us about this cool card.
All right, so this is Captive Audience. It is a Zero Fate event with the action during a political conflict, lose 1 honor. Change the conflict type to military, and it is a 3 influence conflict card. This is a really important. I think it's actually a really important card from a meta perspective because we were talking about Kuri Morai last or 2 weeks ago, or on the Phoenix podcast rather, and saying how that's a really strong province because it just totally messes up your opponent's plan. So this is a card that messes with that. Additionally, because you know how Unicorn has military-based effects, like with their Stronghold and then some of their stronger guys, you can just get 2 military attacks in a turn. Alternatively, this happened in a game we just played. It didn't ended up not mattering, but you can play this on defense to switch a political conflict, which you're maybe can't defend very well, into a military conflict, which you might be able to. Other combos you can do with it are you could start it out as a political conflict, play court games to honor your guy, and then play Captive Audience to switch it to military. So this is a really functional card that I think a number of clans are going to like. Unicorn obviously really like it. Lion might really like this card. Crab maybe a little bit too. But the cost to play this card is so low. It's 0 fate, and then all you do is lose an honor, which is you're doing that for bonsais anyway. So why not? Just super powerful card.
Yep.
Yeah, this card is amazing. And I actually did that last situation that you described. I actually did exactly in a game against Travis. I still lost.
That literally just happened an hour before.
Yeah,
this.
I was gonna say more often than you'd think. You go political and then you just court games and then you switch it to military, just because you need the honor. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is very, very solid.
This is a 3 influence card that feels like if it was any less influence, it would be in every military deck. So.
Oh my gosh! If this thing was 2, it would be. I mean, Lion splashes it, right? And they would just have so much flexibility. You run 3 copies of this, and you still have 4 influence left, or
3x of this and 3x favored mount for Lion just sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
Holy crap!
Which you can do, I guess, if you're a keeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking of doing 3 of this, 2 Spyglass for most decks that are weak in politics.
Yeah.
So you get more card draw, and you get some political boost from your Spyglasses, and then you also get Captive Audience to just say fuck politics, flip the table, we fight. Also, the art on this card.
Art in the card is great. The flavor text says, "Now you must heed our demands." Also, it looks like the Moto Horde from the Moto Horde card showed up in this card.
Yeah, I was mentioning this before. I don't know why they have dash military. I don't see why they don't just come in and go, "Hey, we're gonna do whatever we want." Because we're an army on horseback.
They're not even harassing courtiers though. It looks like they're just harassing monks at a shrine.
The monks are walking out of the shrine with scrolls, and the Moto's "Hey, I'm about to
Gimme.
I'm about to poke you in the face with this sword."
Yeah, super rude. This card is the rudest card. Kuroi Mori basically showed the world how freaking powerful it is to just switch the conflict type sometimes. So this card does that for free, and as a surprise, your opponent might not expect it. So yeah, if you're splashing Unicorn and you play this card, your opponent's "Oh, it's this kind of game now, is it?" And then for the rest of the game, they have to constantly play around Captive Audience, which is a pain in the butt. Yeah, no, this card's amazing.
Oh, it's really important for another card that we'll see. The last one that I get to read.
It's another. Yeah, this is another card that just kind of makes the Unicorn Splash amazing. We'll keep it going. I have a card called I Am Ready. I am ready to talk about I Am Ready. It is a 0-cost event that is action, remove 1 fate from a friendly Unicorn character. Ready that character, and it's 1 influence. Though the 1 influence doesn't matter, again, because it only works on Unicorn characters. For some reason, that's just how it rubs. To be fair, this card would be hella worth splashing if you could use it on any character.
Oh, it'd be so good.
Yeah, lots of decks would love this card. But alas, this is pretty much unicorn only for the time being. Still, though, that's a powerful effect. You basically, each fate on a character is essentially an additional use of that character next turn. So instead of waiting till next turn, unicorn are like, but I want it now, daddy. And they remove the fate and use it right now.
Yeah.
Because they are ready.
It's pretty freaking good, I gotta say. It basically just lets you use the fate flexibly. And I think that's kind of the theme of Unicorn, is being able to move your stats around and like maneuver your units in as flexible a way as possible, you know, being able to control where everything is and when that happens.
I love the really fat dude on the horse in this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I love the art, like the fat dude with like the Pai Mei beard. 10 out of 10.
The art is
someone made
fantastic.
a shoop that says my body is with like it's my body is ready card. So anyway,
even better though, I at some point I would like an alt art card with just SpongeBob on a horse.
Yeah, yeah, or like SpongeBob with like unicorn mons everywhere. Anyway,
Yeah,
this
is unicorn mods instead of holes.
This is a good card. I think like all ready effects are good. Like we talk about a lot. It's a little bit more nuanced than some of the other ready effects that we've seen because you have to pull fate off of a character.
It essentially does cost one fate in that sense too.
So pulling a fate off a character is very different than spending a fate from your pool. So it's something you have to plan for preemptively. That's not to say that it's not difficult to do so. And I just think you also have to be judicious in the way you use this because you're literally forfeiting a future turn with a character to get action out of it now, which you better win. But Unicorn want to win like in 3 turns anyway, so it doesn't really matter. That's why they have a 0 strength, stronghold thing. And they're just gonna swarm you and attack you, and they're gonna bring in all of their awesome cavalry cards and overrun you, and then you're like, okay, they're finally down, and they're like, no, my body is ready, and they stand back up.
Yep. More aggressiveness. Let's go on. Tell us about Way of the Unicorn.
Way of the Unicorn is a 0 cost event. Philosophy, like all the Way of cards. And it reads, interrupt. When you would pass the first player token, keep it.
This card's annoying.
That's it. This card's pretty good in Unicorn. It's kind of funny. It makes a couple of your cards turn on, and I will remember the names of these cards momentarily as I look back through my deck list and stall for time. And
it's just the
Shadow Wielder, that one. Damn, I couldn't get to it in time. Yeah, it turns on the Shadow Wielder, which is cool. It's just generally pretty good for Unicorn to go first. They like to be able to set the tempo of the turn.
Yeah, outside of the first turn, going first is generally an advantage because you get first pick of ring. You get first pick of ring with fate on it, and you get to like sort of set the. You basically get to dictate the pace of the turn based on like the board position. So if you're really ahead and you're going first, it's really good because your opponent sort of has to play reactive for the entire turn. And if you're really behind going first, it's maybe less good, but you can still sort of force your opponent to be more reactive than they otherwise would have been if they were going first. So going first is a real tangible advantage in this game. Beyond that, it just sort of fits the aggressive style. You always break the first province every turn, theoretically. And this means, like, if you play it the turn before you go on their stronghold, you can just all in their stronghold, and they have to play defensively that turn. And you can play multiple Way of the Unicorns in a row and just go first every turn and always all in first challenge. It works decently well, actually.
Yeah, card is good. I think better than I initially gave it credit for. You still have the issue of if you're going. I guess if you're going second, you draw into it. It's not the end of the world because you'll just get to go first for turns 2 and 3, but you didn't draw a card that helped you in a conflict, which could be bad. But yeah, it's just I think it's all around solid philosophy. Like of the philosophy cards, is very solid. If comparing to like Way of the Lion, Way of the Crane. Maybe not as good as those in terms of providing raw stats for a specific fight. Way of the Crab.
Way of the Phoenix.
Better than Way of the Phoenix for sure. Is it better than Way of the Crab?
Yeah, no.
Probably not.
Way of the Crab is like really swingy, right?
Yeah.
It either does very little, next to nothing, which is fine because you're Crab and you got a lot of card draw anyway. You don't care about having a dead card as much, or it just wins you the game.
Right, you just get rid of their guy. So yeah, Unicorn are just gonna like this card. Obviously, for some of the synergies that they have, it's definitely not as. yeah, you're gonna be happy to have it in your deck. Maybe it gets cut later on when it doesn't really matter. I don't know, but it's an okay card to have in your deck. You're not upset to see it. You are upset when it gets discarded and you can't play it because you were planning on playing it. But yeah,
It's an oddly specific scenario, Dan.
It may or may not have happened. I wouldn't either confirm or. But yeah, no, it's a fun card in Unicorn. Like you just keep going first. You're like, haha, I get all my 1-cost water Jesus Shugenjas, and I get to really dictate the pace of the game because I'm really putting my opponent on the back foot, like for all the reasons that we said. So
yep, it's way of the Unicorn. I think it'll see play for a while. Maybe it'll get cut later on, but right now I think it's here to stay. Get used to it. Last card. This one is a big one. Everything else has cost 0 from their events, except for this. It suddenly costs 3. Tell us about it, Dan.
Keeping with the theme of I get to read all the cool cards. This is a 3-cost event. This is Cavalry Reserves with the action. During a military conflict, choose up to 6 printed cost worth of cavalry characters in your Dynasty discard pile. Put those characters into play in the conflict, and it's 2 influence. I don't know why it's 2 influence again, because no other clan has Cav. So this doesn't really matter for now. But for Unicorn, this is a super powerful card, right? You already can change political conflicts to military if you so desire for a 0 fate event, right? And then if you have 3 fate, you're dropping this guy. So not only did you totally turn the tables on your opponent, you're bringing in a whole bunch of more stats into the conflict that they weren't there previously. This is also great because it means that Unicorn is okay with cycling through their Dynasty card or Dynasty deck and putting things in the discard because you're like, I might see it later. Like I'm not worried about having to buy things this turn because I'm gonna get value out of it later. What was the highest military skill combination we could think of for this? It's I think a Moto Horde plus 2 Moto Youths on the first military conflict of the turn for plus 10, something like that. Or no, it'd be 9 12.
Yeah, something like that. It's like
that's pretty high.
It's like Moto Horde plus 2 Moto Youth. Yeah, that's 12. I think you could have get 13 somehow, but I don't remember how.
I mean, theoretically, if everything goes perfectly, you can do more. I'm not sure. I feel like.
Oh yeah, 3 Moto Use plus aggressive Moto plus like another 1-drop cavalry unit maybe.
Oh,
that might do it.
What's the other? There's no other 1-drop cav though.
That's true.
Maybe
they have a
can we cheese it and say, oh, you have a Utaku infantry in the battle, and it gets +1 for every. So the more units you have,
Well, what makes like Utaku infantry already nuts because you have movement abilities. Cavalry Reserve makes that card even more nuts because you're bringing in extra dudes, so he's getting super buffed. So you just have like an army out of nowhere, and your opponent's like, oh great, I have to deal with like 20 skill this turn of these huge guys that I can't route because they're all cavalry, right? So you can just move them back in. This is a super fun card. This is one of the reasons to like play Unicorn, right? Is because you get to play Cavalry Reserve and just dump a bunch of cavalry dudes into a military fight.
Yeah, it's like a super spirit collar for 3.
Side notes though, 1, it is 3 fate, so it is kind of a lot. And if you have 3 fate sitting around, your opponent has played against Unicorn, I'm assuming. He probably understands that this card exists. So they're going to be looking through your discard pile and going, what do I not want to see? Secondary note, this is amazing with your clan champion. If you happen to bring your clan champion in on a turn where you need that amount of stats to break anyway, and you get a free discard out of it, or you get a free kill out of it, that can be huge tempo going into the next turn. So this card is both really good and definitely able to be played around.
Also really sucks to get countered.
Yeah, because your Unicorn,
Voice of Honor.
It sucks.
Oh, Voice of Honor.
Yeah. And maybe there might be some other counter cards later in the game's life.
Is that a hint from Mr. I've played the game, seen all the cards? Nah.
No. Yes. Maybe it's. I will just like it makes sense that if FFG would introduce more event cancels or event counter type effects, either on characters, so something like maybe a Maya Mystic type ability where you discarded to cancel an event.
That'd be fun. I'd love that.
That's a very common thing that they'll do in Lord of the Rings LCG, is they'll put kind of cancel effects on characters where you discard them to cancel effects. So I would expect seeing something like that down the line, but Scorpion do have an event cancel.
Yeah, although to be fair, Lord of the Rings is hard to compare to because it's co-op. But
well, yeah. So, but I'm saying there's a little bit of there's some slight mechanic crossover in the game. So Caleb Grace, one of the lead designers for Lord of the Rings LCG, actually designed the entire Lion Clan. So there's a lot of like designer crossover for things, and they tend to pull different abilities from different things into the various games. So like the Agasha Swordsmith is an almost carbon copy of another Lord of the Rings card, and another Star Wars LCG and Warhammer 40k Conquest card. So I wouldn't be surprised if they had a more neutral type cancel effects that were a little bit more costly along the lines of Maya Mystic, or if they introduced more cancel effects into the other clans. So
yeah, it's definitely possible.
So bringing it back to Cavalry
that's a super
Reserves,
tangent anyway.
This card sucks if it gets canceled. Otherwise, it's freaking baller.
Yeah, this card just kind of wins you.
It's conflict winning. It's conflict
It's so
winning.
good.
Yeah. And
as a unicorn, you want to be able to fire this off, right? You want to get into situations where, like, okay, I can use my cavalry reserve because now I can break a province. This is, I guess, that's the other situation where breakthrough could be useful. Huh.
I mean, you could do the dream is like you do a military conflict, right? And you have like one guy left over. You break through, and then you do your political conflict. You captive audience it to military, and then you cavalry reserve. Oh, another thing about this card that no one's mentioned yet. There's no limit on this card. You can play multiple of these in one turn. For 9 fate, you can get 18 cost worth of cavalry out of your discard pile, and basically guarantee you win the conflict. There's like nothing your opponent can do.
Super
cavalry. This is one of the first things I said when I saw this card is if you get like 3 or 4 turns in and you have like a bunch of cavalry just sitting in your discard, and you're looking at a stronghold, you just kind of walk into the stronghold and go, I play 3 cavalry reserve and win the game.
I mean, I don't think you ever play 3. You might sometimes play 2. 3 requires
I don't think you play 3 in a turn, but like it's possible. The implication of that is insane because if you're walking in a stronghold and you have more than one of these in your hand, I think you can it's almost impossible to lose.
I will say they didn't say unicorn cards on it, right? So it says cav.
It does just say cavalry.
So maybe maybe based on story events, other clans are going to get cavalry type cards, which would be super weird. But also makes the card somewhat splashable because it's only 2 influence.
I mean, it's possible if we let Meishoto through, that's more likely to get cavalry, or we'll have more cavalry in other decks. I could see that being a thing.
Yeah, I could totally see that maybe being a thing later on down the line. So
that'd be like 2 cycles off or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, more than 2. I'd say like pretty late, like Netrunner late in the game's lifespan. Then maybe we can see like decks that have a lot of cavalry that aren't unicorn, and they might run this card.
They just do a whole cycle based on like cavalry cards for every clan. Oh, that'd be hilarious.
I'm waiting for that we let Meishoto through, and the entire Phoenix clan is just adopts horsery or horsery. What am I saying? Just adopts horse riding, and they're just like, yeah, we're cavalry now.
Horse riding is kind of common. It's just that the unicorn horses are not normal horses. They're like steroid horses.
Yeah. They're like super horses, and people in the general, people that aren't unicorn generally don't use them for battle. They're not war trained, and they don't really understand cavalry that much. Yeah, but it's not that good. That's what I'm saying. It's not super common.
The unicorn definitely dominate that realm.
Yeah, there is cavalry, but it's not super prevalent.
Yeah, so maybe far off. That's the last unicorn card right now, so we're going to do our usual discussion here. How do you think unicorn look overall? And I'm going to ask again, what allies do you think they will probably be taking?
I mean, I just think they're really strong, baseline. There are a few factions that I think are possibly equally as strong. But I think Unicorn is the most strong and straightforward clan so far. Like, I think it's relatively simple to see why they're strong and how to play them. They're maybe not super easy to play because you have to know like when it is good to not move things in, when you should move things in, and things like that. But I think that's relatively easy to learn as you learn the game, as opposed to something like, I think Phoenix is going to be a very hard deck to play correctly because of all the niche effects and things. So I think that's pretty much it. I think Unicorn will have a very strong showing early in the game while people are still learning it, and then maybe we'll balance out as people learn the game and like figure out how to play around them. But for sure, this is going to be one of the stronger factions right out of the gate as people are figuring the game out, because you just have so much flexibility and so much strength with your cards.
So
as far as splashes, I'm sorry. As far as splashes, I think I've personally just been splashing Dragon. I don't see any other splashes being all that worth it in Unicorn, honestly. Like, Crab is okay for Reprieve, Lion is okay for Sashimono, but you don't really care that much. Honored Blade is kind of nice sometimes, but I think you just splash Dragon right now. I don't know too many other cards that I really want in Unicorn too much more than like Let Go and Tattooed Wanderer rather.
So I agree with Gentry pretty much on all points. In most games, like rush type decks tend to do well early in the game's life, and Unicorn being kind of a swarmy, balanced rush based faction is a huge advantage for them. So if you compare to the other swarm faction, which is supposed to be Lion, Lion are disproportionately military, and Unicorn have balanced stats almost across the board with a handful of exceptions, and they have ways to cheat those guys back out with cavalry reserves, and they have ways to generate card advantage with like Spyglass and Eat a Trader, etc., etc. So they just look really strong in the few games that I've played. In a single core environment, they're probably going to be less so because you get less value out of like stuff like cavalry reserves, just a little less consistency. But overall, very strong, very fun clan. Figuring out kind of how to manipulate your board in terms of moving things in and out of places, and when's the best time to commit, and all that stuff is super enjoyable. And as far as splashes go, yeah, I guess I'll echo the Dragon sentiment again as well. I mean, it's just super flexible. Having Let Go and Tattooed Wanderer just allow for an extra level of flexibility, both in the conflict phase and just in terms of messing up your opponent's game plan. Zero cost of attachment removal is just solid in this game. If you want to go for the super combo, you could splash Lion to get 4 Greater Glory. So then you play Cavalry Reserves, and then you break the province, then you play 4 Greater Glory, because pretty much all of the cavalry cards have Bushi on them too. So you could just do this 4-card awesome Johnny combo.
I was gonna say, I did think about that too when I was looking at Lion, and I was like, that could be kind of fun. I don't know if it's any good. I'm not sure that it's worth doing, but
like
it would
the dream,
be super
right?
fun.
It's kind of a dream, yeah. So you spend 4 fate to get 6 fate worth of cavalry guys twice, so you could essentially get like 9 fate worth of value, right? Maybe. Like
yeah, whatever the
9.
value cost on the guys are, yeah.
So you kind of double up. It's not like super bad, but it's not amazing either.
It's okay.
It's pretty freaking good.
You build a board.
But then you're running a lot of cards that don't do anything until you can set that up too.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
You're setting up
That's
this
the main problem.
combo.
That's what I'm saying. Is like it's a dream scenario, but if you
And
pull
then
it
you also-
off, you like win the game pretty
You
much.
also play Fallen in Battle, and you had Shinjo Alternator Sound in play, so you like killed 2 of their guys. Oh my gosh! Just how many broken province things can we pull off with this?
Yeah. It could
combo?
happen.
Anyway.
It might be a real deck. Like, I don't know. It might be more like better and more consistent than we think it is, but it seems like a dream.
I think overall, Unicorn looked to be the premier like aggro faction. I think Lion, a lot of people expected to be aggressive from the CCG days, but I don't think Lion are that aggressive in the LCG. I think they're more of like a build. They build a board up, and like they eventually just have like this stupidly unstoppable military presence in the late game when they have like 200 generals in play with like Spirit Color pulling out Taturi, some Steadfast Samurais that have been there for several turns, and like a bunch of other cheap guys that they bought this turn. So like Lion don't really seem as much of an aggressive faction to me as much as they are like more of like a tempo swarm. They build a big board and then they buff up a bunch of guys. So Unicorn just being that aggressive note we've kind of missed. Crane can be really aggressive, but Unicorn just kind of dial it up to 11. So like I think like every game with the Unicorn has been over by turn 3 that I've seen. Either the Unicorn has lost by then, or the Unicorn has absolutely destroyed the game and ran away with the win. So I think they're a big faction to watch out for in the 3-core environment, and I think every deck kind of has to consider Unicorn and like how you're going to deal with their ability to just go and go and go. They're like the Energizer Bunny; they don't stop.
One of the cool things about the game actually is there's a different level of interplay for clan matchups. So like things that Crab maybe want to do against Unicorn are going to be slightly different than they're going to want to do against Crane or Scorpion. So yeah, thinking about the Unicorn matchup for your whatever deck you're playing is going to be really important. The mirror for this one is going to be so weird.
It's going to come down to who hit the Endless Plains.
Who hit Endless Plains and who hit Cab Reserve, right? So
yeah.
It could, maybe they splash something that's like a huge swingy card. Because Unicorn have a few cards that, Unicorn have a few Dynasty characters that you could blackmail. And that kind of flip things around, which could be funny.
Blackmail's another one of those events that you kind of just pay 3 and then you win a conflict. Much like Cavalry Reserves.
I would say
I haven't seen many situations where you blackmail
but...
something and lose. There's been a couple, but it's not likely.
Yeah, it's just slightly. I think it's slightly worse than Cavalry Reserves, but slightly more consistent.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Speaking of Cavalry Reserves, we're also seeing Ambush from Scorpion, which is pretty much the exact same wording. You get to get 6 costs worth of characters, but instead of from your Dynasty discard pile, it has to be Scorpion characters from your hand or provinces. And that's
a lot more.
It's a little more narrow, but you can potentially do more with it.
Well, it's simultaneously more narrow, but less so, because Cavalry Reserves you cannot play in turn 1. Ambush you could play in turn 1, but yeah, it's Ambush is an interesting card. I'm not 100% sold on it. As you're gonna build your deck around it, but it's a fun card. It was fun.
I think that card is going to be developed based on how many good Scorpion conflict characters we get over the years. Because I don't think you usually don't have that many characters left over in provinces, and your opponent probably expects charge. So from hand, it's going to be a lot scarier of a card. Boom, I paid 3 and put 8 force worth of stuff into the conflict from hand. What's up? So that'll be cool. I do think Cavalry Reserves is a little better than Ambush overall. But we'll see. And by the time this comes out, hopefully you guys will have seen too, because I think they're going to release the Scorpion cards by the time this episode is out. Yeah. So hopefully you guys are able to know more about it than we do right now.
Kinda hope so.
We can't all be Dan and have friends with full core sets. Do I sound salty? That's only because I am.
I'll be salty.
I'm not.
All these flavors,
I'm not really,
choose to be salty.
Yeah, exactly. You got all of these flavors. Why choose to be salty or bitter? I
just realized we didn't come up with a name for this podcast like we have in the other ones.
Oh, I've already had a name. This is gonna be Clippity Cloppity.
Clippity.
I was gonna add a motherfucker at the end of it, but I don't know. I feel like that's probably too much. Clippity.
Wait, are we a family-friendly podcast now? Because I think I've ruined that.
I mean, I've said fuck 3 times this podcast.
Yeah, so have
I. Not safe for work.
But for a title, I might just do Clippity Cloppity and then the asterisks for motherfucker.
Yeah, Unicorn are fun. They're all the clans are fun, but Unicorn have because of the movement shenanigans, they're fun to play around with. It's going to be fun at Gen Con with everyone picking things, trying all these different things out. Where things are going to land and just getting all the experience and stuff with that. And then they're finally going to spoil Scorpion, and so everyone can see some of the cool stuff that they've got. I mean, the spoilers we've got so far are already pretty neat.
Yeah, they got a lot of cool things they can do at the cost of just a little bit of honor. Who needs that anyway?
Yeah, and honestly, I think I might end up using Unicorn as a teaching tool It's maybe not the easiest clan to play, but it's probably the most fun that I've had so
anything
far.
to get rid
Just
of the
like
lion
messing
versus
around with
crane
stuff.
generic
Lion
matchup.
Crane matchup is so bland. Like when you
Yeah.
like compare to the other things in this game, the different things you can do, it's just
It
sort of
is.
like
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like I think if I'm teaching the game, I'm gonna start like I'm teaching somebody probably like later. I might teach them later today if I have time, or like sometime during the week, and I'm probably gonna end up pulling out Unicorn for them. So I think it'll be better.
They are indeed aggressive and relatively straightforward clan.
Yeah,
Just
I
running
don't think
the
they're
opponent
too
fast.
hard to play like decently. Yeah, I think they're reasonably easy to play at a competent level. So I think they're probably really good for that, which is nice. They're just fun. They're just generally fun to play.
Oh, they're
so.
very fun. They're very fun to play, which is gonna be annoying because I feel like they're gonna be really not fun to play against.
Yeah, they're
So if
going to be
fun
not
to play. They're gonna
against
be
at all.
popular and not fun to play against.
just
Yeah,
play crab
we'll see.
and don't do anything.
Just play crab. Yeah. Ah, man. Speaking of crab, I mean, I do think, like, as much as like we may have like maybe said like crab seem inconsistent and clunky at times, the power level of every deck in this game so far seems really close. Like really, really close. I'm looking forward to see like if like we do get a developed meta where like some factions aren't played, because right now I just don't think that's the case.
Right.
I think there hasn't been a faction yet that I think will not be played. Like ignoring clan loyalty, because like like just like aside, I think that every faction will be played and every faction will probably do well.
Yeah, so I think I said this on the Discord or some other places, but so much of the game, and I kind of realized this more when I was teaching yesterday or teaching on Friday. So much of the game revolves around your resource management. So like what you're spending fate on, if you're putting extra fate into things, how much fate you're going to the conflict phase with, and then also your ring selection, your ring and conflict selection. The decks all have the ability to maneuver into certain positions, and there's no one clan feels horribly overpowered or underpowered. It's a very player driven game in terms of the choices that you make for the things that you buy and the rings you select. So it'll be cool to see. It's cool to see that now. Obviously that might shake out and like one clan's going to be terrible. I think Game of Thrones has almost like a 3 faction meta for the most part, with a handful of people playing Tyrell, but they've never had kind of the fully balanced set like maybe L5 might have, simply because of how close everything feels. So
Yeah, but again, we're a small card pool of players, or a small pool of players. Things might play out differently when you get them out into the masses and everyone's playing games.
yeah.
And we'll see when the tournament results will really tell the tale, right?
It's always surprising. Like you can never predict tournament results. Like from years and years of playing competitive card games, every single time you try and come up with what will be good, you will be surprised because a big tournament will happen and some deck you barely even knew existed will just randomly come out of nowhere and win the game, win the entire tournament, and then everybody will go, oh yeah, I guess that is pretty good. Like, and it happens with every card game, every single time. Sometimes the meta is somewhat predictable, but especially with a newer card game, it's almost impossible to figure out what's going to come of it.
Yeah, I think
unfortunately, Gen Con isn't going to give us a lot of interesting information because it's single core.
Because it's single core, yeah, it's not going to be very helpful, but that's okay because Worlds isn't too far away.
Worlds is going to be the first big tournament where it's a 3-core environment and you'll get a sense of stuff. Though Game of Thrones got won by like Martell splashing Targaryen or something, and then Martell has never been good. Is a Martell Tyrell? Yeah, and then that deck was like, or that combination was never good for the rest of the game's life. I don't know. It's
it was just a really good pilot. That was all it was.
It's someone who had won like in a 1.0 environment too, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
or something like that. Yeah, it's just a really good player.
Old school player. Yeah, that about brings us to 2 hours here. Let's wrap it up, I guess. I think Gen Con is really hype. I'm super excited to go there and meet you, Dan, and meet anyone else who listens to the podcast or the people on the Discord who I interact with every day. Same with Reddit and the forums. I'll be wearing a Winter Court Podcast t-shirt on Thursday, and I think Dan will as well. So you should be able to
I mean,
find
I'm
us
wearing
on-
one right now. I just cut the sleeves off.
Ah, yeah. There you go. Boom. You can find us if you want to talk to us about anything. We're obviously going there pretty much exclusively for L5R, so it's going to be L5R Con. And any other final thoughts before we go?
I think we've pretty much covered everything.
Yeah,
Gen Con hype.
Gen Con hype. So thank you guys for listening to the Winter Court Podcast. We are basically at exactly 2 hours, and so we cut it down a little bit for you. Until next time, go to Gen Con, play some games, and get more hype for the game. Thank you for listening.